Well, fantastic. Good on you. It's Monday night. Monday night, and I guarantee you're not here because you've got nothing else to do. Or maybe you've got nothing else to do. Come and see me and I'll handball a few things. Seriously, great to see you here on a Monday night. Give yourself a little pat on the back for getting here. Lots of other things you could be doing this evening, but here you are. And so congratulations for investing in your own life and development, whether you're volunteering, leading, serving in church, whatever your vocation, your ministry, your job, your career might be. I'm really looking forward to sharing with you tonight and hope it'll be a real help to each one of you. I shared a little bit about my family yesterday, a little bit about my kind of ministry, vocation, career background. I'm a PK. Anyone know what a PK is? PK is a preacher's kid. Any preacher's kid in the room? Actually, my dad used to call me a TO, which is stands for theological offspring, which is a little higher class of PK. But anyway, I grew up in a Christian home. My dad was a preacher. My dad actually said, if you can get out of church ministry, Mark, get out of it. You know, most people don't know what happens between Sundays, and, but he says, if God's called you, you probably won't get out of it. So I didn't come out of the womb wanting to be a pastor. I actually wasn't quite sure what I wanted to be. In fact, I was fairly shy as a kid. I used to get embarrassed pretty easily. My hair was bright red back in those days. And if someone pointed me out in class, my face would go as red as my hair, I had lots of nicknames in those days. Carrot Top, people used to call me. Big Red was another one. Towering Inferno was a bit more creative one. And so I had a lot of insecurities, a lot of inferiority. I didn't see myself as a leader. In fact, that was a bit of a prison around my life, all that insecurity. It took a while to kind of break out of that prison and accept myself, realizing being redhead's cool. Any redheads in the building today? Come on, we're still on fire for Jesus. Everyone else is burnt out, aren't they, Craig? Some of you don't even have any hair. I mean, come on. Used to have the waves, now you got the beach. Some of you get that tomorrow. So it took a while to accept myself, and I'm tall, and tall's great. Weather's good up here, a little closer to God than most of you, and just to have confidence that I could do something with my life. Anyway, so I dabbled in a bunch of part-time jobs out of high school. I worked for a builder's renovator, worked for a bookbinder, worked at National Mutual in the city here for about 5 years in their printing department. And then I got invited onto church staff to be the music director. So that's where I started. It's doing worship, doing ministry. I actually did that for about 5 years as a volunteer and then came on staff in that role. Back in those days, I realized worship was the most important ministry in the church. And the best meetings were when no one preached, we just worshipped. We almost could have done that tonight, Paul. Really, I could have just stayed down there. That was really wonderful. Let's thank our worship team for leading us and serving with your gifts tonight. There's some wonderful moments there. And so I thought I'd be a worship leader the rest of my life, And then after about 5 years doing that, Nicole and I got married, and I was asked to be the youth pastor. I thought, oh man, I have to get out from behind the keyboard. Where's Marco? Marco Polo, yeah, there's Marco over there. Great job with the keyboards there, Marco. You were smashing it tonight. And so I had to kind of get out from the keyboards, learn to talk, work with young people. I was a little bit nervous at first, but eventually loved leading the youth. In fact, I then realized that youth ministry was the most important ministry in the church. And I thought I'd be a youth pastor the rest of my life. And so we did that, loved that. After about 5 years of doing that, I was asked to be the business manager at the church. I said, what's that? Administrator. And I said, okay, I'll have a go at that. And so I went and did a diploma on business management, did accounting 101, Raylene, and supervision. And then I realized being organized was the most important thing in the church. How many know the gift of administration is the gift of the Holy Spirit? Thank you. There's a few nodding heads around the place. About this time, I was having an identity crisis. Who in the world am I? Sometimes God's will makes sense when you look back, not when you're in it. I was having all these different roles, and then eventually became the senior minister of a church, did that for many years. And so that was kind of my journey through ministry. And so maybe for you, I don't know, maybe you came out of the womb and you knew what you wanted to be and you had a lot of clarity, unlike me. Maybe you've been in one area and you just love it and you want to do it the rest of your life. Or maybe you identify a little bit with me. You've kind of worn some different hats and been in some different spaces. We all have a different journey. Or maybe you're here tonight going, I'm not even sure where I fit and where I could serve. I pray that as we share tonight, there'll be something for everybody. My title tonight, coming up on the screen now, there it is, Successful Christian Ministry, is our theme for tonight. By success, I don't think success is being better than someone else. It's being the best you that you can be. In many ways, God's gift to you is your potential. Your gift back to Him is what you do with it. And so we're talking about success. We're not talking about being bigger, better, faster. It's not a competition. We're talking about you being the very best you can be for God. Successful Christian ministry. And when I talk about ministry, I'm not just talking about church work. How many know our whole life is a service to God? And so I'm a big believer in everyone is in full-time ministry. Whether you're working at the church office or not, every one of you are in full-time ministry. John over here is working down with cows. He's got a dairy farm. And he's a great man with a great heart, and he's got an incredible ministry. He runs a chapel at annual Dairy Week up at Tatura, Shepparton, and gets a bunch of dairy farmers in a room where there's lots of cow smell. Cow patties, cow pies, and I've been privileged to go up there and speak. John's got a ministry. You might never see him up here, but he's got a ministry. And every one of you have a ministry, whatever your work is, and so there's something here for everybody today. Tonight's going to be a little bit like a buffet. Anyone like buffets? Paul likes buffets. In a buffet, you don't fill your plate with one dish, do you? You kind of take a little bit of, well, some of you might, I don't know. You go along and you have a little bit of, and so it's going to be a bit like that tonight. By the end, you'll hopefully feel full. You won't have indigestion. I don't want you to be stuffed, but there'll just be a variety of things that we cover tonight. There'll be some basics here. C.S. Lewis, I believe he said this, or so someone said it was Samuel Johnson, but anyway, someone smarter than me said, we need to be reminded more than we need to be instructed. So some of the stuff tonight will be review, it'll be basic, but it'll be a reminder that I think will be important in your life. And on the next slide, I quoted yesterday John Maxwell, most Christians are educated beyond the level of their obedience. Yes, let's move on. That's just a bit painful, isn't it? We need some help doing what we already know. So let's get into it. I'm going to share some principles for you having a fruitful, a productive, a successful ministry, wherever you find yourself. Number one, next slide, is to value your ministry. I've reflected a lot on my own life growing up as a preacher's kid. I've been in church, I've been around. I'm over 50 now, I won't tell you how far over. So I've looked at a lot of people and I've asked, what's the key to being fruitful, to being effective? Anyone that's having an impact, I tell you what, they value what they're doing. This has to do with your perspective. 2 Timothy 1 verse 9, we read this yesterday. God has saved us, called us with a holy, one translation says with a high calling. We're not just saved to go to heaven, but we are called. God has selected every one of you here today. I love sport, as I mentioned yesterday, and when I was a kid, we used to play basketball. There was a lot of basketball players here, and sometimes we'd have a bit of a scrimmage match, and the two best players would be captains. And so they'd stand left and right, and everyone else would line up, and then the captains would pick one by one. Jim, isn't it? Yeah, Jim, and then someone else goes, Angela, and so the captains would pick one by one until they got their team, and then those that didn't get picked sat on the sidelines. There's nothing better than having one of the captains go, hey, I want you on my team. Oh, I felt pretty good, Game hasn't even started, but you're feeling good already. There's nothing worse than being picked last. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll grab you. Or not being picked at all. The great thing about Jesus is he selects all of us. He doesn't overlook anybody. He actually says to each one of us, not only do I love you, I want you on my team. He calls us. Now, when you just realize that Jesus has called you, can you imagine the impact that has on what and how you do what you do? If Jesus said, when we're finished here today, I'd like you to vacuum this room for me, what kind of a job do you think you'd do? Pretty good, pretty good. Thank you for the enthusiastic response from the rest of you. It's just an illustration. You don't have to do it. But if you could just see that Jesus has called you and change your perspective, what a difference that could make. There's a funny story of two men on a building site, and they're moving bricks from here over to here. And the first man, he's moving these bricks, and someone says, hey, what are you doing? He goes, well, we're just moving bricks from there to there. The second man's doing the same job, and someone says to him, what are you doing? He goes, we're building a cathedral. Same job, different perspective. Same job, different perspective. And so as you serve, as you use your gifts, not everyone's going to be prominent. We're not all going to be up on stage. We're not all going to be in the limelight. But every one of us are significant. And if we could see what I am doing, I'm doing because Jesus has called me and I want to do it to Him. What a perspective that can give us in how we go about our ministry. And sometimes I meet people that say, oh, so where do you serve? What do you do? And sometimes they'll say, I'm just a. You ever heard that? You know, sometimes you get someone, David says, oh, I'm just a kids volunteer. Never say, I'm just a kids volunteer. My favorite kids ministry story is apparently D.L. Moody had an evangelistic meeting. And after the meeting, someone said, hey, how'd it go tonight? He says, really good. 2.5 people got saved. Someone said, what 2.5 people? You mean 2 adults and a kid? He said, no. 2 kids and an adult. The adult's life is half over. The kids have their whole life ahead of them. Come on. Never say, I'm just a kids minister, a kids volunteer. What a phenomenal ministry. It's interesting you highlighted that tonight. To be investing into a child's life and set the correction of their entire future. Never say, I'm just an usher. I'm just a hospitality team member. My favorite usher story is apparently many years ago, there was a big tent meeting going on and it was packed, and a couple of young people were trying to get into the tent, but it was so full they started to walk away. An usher saw them and said, hey guys, don't go. Let me find your seat. And he pushed in and he found these 2 teenagers a seat in the tent. One of those teenagers' name was Billy Graham. Never say I'm just an usher. You know, sometimes we don't need a new ministry. We just need a new perspective on what we're doing right now. Moses was on desert ground and God said, hey, take off your shoes. You're on holy ground. I want to encourage you to value what you're doing. It will lift the way you go about how you serve and the impact that you have. Think highly of the work. Paul says, I've been called with a high and a holy calling. Value what you do. Number 2, moving along our buffet tonight, second dish. Number 2 is to live your ministry. If you're going to have a fruitful, successful ministry, it's about living your ministry, which is your example. Paul says in 1 Timothy 4:12 to young Timothy, young leader in the church, coming up, a little shy, a bit timid. Hey, Tim, don't let anyone think less of you because you're young, but be, everyone say be an example. Greek word tupos, a type, a model, a representation of to the believers in what you say and the way you live and your love and your faith and your purity. Could I suggest to you that your greatest impact will be who you are, not what you do, not what you know, not what you say. Simple illustration. I'd like you to think of the person who has impacted your life positively more than anyone else in your entire life. Who's that person? Don't tell me their name. Hopefully you've got someone. If not, think of Jesus. So, who's had the biggest impact on your life? Hopefully you've got someone in mind. Second question is, why did you pick them? What was it about them that made them come to the top of your thinking? And I don't want to know their name, but I want to know why you picked them. Come on, interact with me. The way they conduct their life. Can you be a bit more specific?
Just their values.
Okay, values. Yeah, values. Someone else. Authentic? Yep. Positive? Godly loving. You got 2. That's okay. You can lift your hand and share more than one. Yeah. Seeing the value in you. Yep. Consistency. Sorry? Okay. They were an example. Consistency. Good.
Loved unconditionally.
Unconditional love. Can you yell that out for me? Okay. Good. Few others? Lived out their faith. Yep. Respect. Humility. Okay, let's pause right now. You're telling me about the person that had the greatest impact on your life. I'm always amazed about what people never say. No one said they were a great preacher, which is really discouraging for those of us who preach, Luke. No one ever says it. No one said they had amazing Bible knowledge. No one said it, which is really discouraging for those of us that went to Bible college and studied the Bible. No one said they were a phenomenal musician, which is also really discouraging, isn't it, Paul? For those of us who practice hour after hour after hour. In fact, no one here today mentioned a skill or a talent. Every one of you mentioned qualities about who the person was. They knew what it was to respect you. They were authentic. They were loving without condition. They were humble, someone said. They actually saw value in you. You just told me that the person that had the greatest impact on your life, it was who they were that had the greatest impact. And that should challenge every one of us. But the great news is there's not one quality that you mentioned tonight that you can't have in your life. You can respect people. You can be authentic. You can be humble. You can love unconditionally. You can do all those things. They're not out of your reach. And who knows, maybe someone will do this exercise a few years from now and someone will be thinking of you when they ask the question, who had the greatest impact in their life? Now, don't get me wrong, Bible college, knowledge, we'll get there. But sometimes you've just got to stop and say, your life is your message. Your life is your greatest example. And so make sure, it doesn't mean that we're perfect, but think about who you are as a person and the impact that has on those around about you. Can I have an amen on that? Amen. Excellent. Number 3, as we move along. Number 3 is to love your ministry. This has to do with our attitude. I tell you what, our attitude is contagious. I love this about Paul. This is near the end of his life. He goes, I thank Jesus Christ our Lord, who has enabled me because he counted me faithful, putting me in the ministry. What's amazing about this scripture is if you ever have a bad day, just get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and write all of your challenges on the one side. And on the left side, think of the Apostle Paul and everything that he faced. Just make the 2 lists. And without in any way diminishing what you may be challenged with, you'll probably feel a little bit better already. I mean, think of Paul. I mean, he was shipwrecked a couple of times, hanging on a plank all night. He spent years in prison. It wasn't on his calendar plan for stuff that he didn't do. He had team members desert him, had people stab him in the back. He had people try to kill him. He was stoned with real stones. You just look at everything he went through, and near the end of your life, he goes, I just want to thank the Lord. If I was near the end of my life, I would have said, hey, Jesus, on Damascus, you didn't kind of tell me that, this was going to happen. What an amazing attitude. I want to thank the Lord for the privilege of serving for Jesus. See, having a good attitude doesn't mean bad stuff won't happen to you. It doesn't mean you'll never have times when you feel bad. But it enables you to rise above the challenges and even the negative feelings that you may be experiencing, and to actually love not only God, but what He's called you to do. All of us have negative emotions. And you ever been shopping and got a shopping trolley with one wheel that doesn't work? Always. How annoying is that? It's frustrating, it's squeaking, you're squealing. One negative emotion is like that on the inside of you, whether it's fear or anger or resentment. And you know what? We're all going to have negative emotions. There's nothing wrong with emotions. They're actually indicators. They're getting our attention. And so we've got to learn to take the oil, as it were, to that stuck wheel and loose it up so it doesn't stop us. Having a great attitude doesn't mean you won't have negative emotions, but it's making sure that those emotions don't stop you, don't hold you down. So love your ministry. Have a great attitude about it. Ultimately, how many know we're responsible for our attitude? We are. Funny story, our second son, Ashley, David knows Ashley well. He's the kind of the clown in our family. And when he was a kid, I remember one Saturday morning, Nicole and I lying in bed, sleeping in, just waking up, and Ashley bursts into our bedroom and goes, "Dad, someone wet my bed." Serious as you can imagine. And I went, what do you mean? You're the only one that's been in your bed. He goes, no, it wasn't me. Someone wet my bed. He was seriously believing that someone else was responsible. It's a funny story, but sometimes we're a little bit like that. Like our attitude stinks, but we're kind of going, yeah, you don't know my boss, and you don't know who I live with, you don't know. The sooner we just admit it, get the bed sheets changed, get the stink out of there, the better for everybody. Can't control what happens to you, what people will say or do, but you can choose the attitude that you have. Let's move to number 4 now. Fourth principle is to grow your ministry. So we want to value what we're doing, have a perspective on it that sees it as important. We want to live our ministry, our life, our character is our greatest message. We want to love our ministry. Doesn't mean it will always be easy, but maintain a great attitude. Fourthly is to grow our ministry. This is the area of excellence. 1 Timothy 4, Paul gives Timothy a bunch of things to work on. Before verse 15, he says, hey, work on your preaching, your public reading of Scripture, pray over those prophetic words you've been given, give yourself, and then he says, be diligent in all these matters, give yourself wholly to them so that everyone may see your progress. Everyone say the word progress? Progress. Your life is intended to be a life of progress, which means a year from now, you won't just be a year older, but you'll actually have progressed. You'll have grown in the gifts, the abilities, the experience that you have. Progress doesn't happen just by hanging around for another year. How many know some people grow old but never grow up? Not in this room, but people out there. Progress doesn't just happen by hanging around for another year. Progress is the result of us working on the things that God has given us. I love this definition on the next slide. Again, all your basketball fans will love this one. Pat Riley, great NBA coach, once said, excellence is the gradual result of always striving to do better. I love that. Excellence is the gradual result of always striving to do better. Often we see someone who excels at something, we go, wow, I could never do that. Aren't they amazing? But we don't see the journey they've taken to get to where they are today. Maybe you just started learning guitar, you listen to Paul and I go, oh, that's amazing. Listen to how he plays. This isn't the first time Paul's played tonight. In fact, you may not have wanted to be there the first time Paul played. See, neither would you have wanted to be there the first time I spoke. We often see someone and we go, isn't that amazing? But we don't see the journey. We don't see the practice. We don't see the hours. Excellence is the gradual result of always striving to do better. Simple illustration I heard from John Maxwell. Next slide. Let's take 5 areas of your life right now. Your prayer life, your knowledge of the Bible, your people skills, your organization ability, and your vision for your job, your career, your ministry. And let's say if we rated those from kind of 1 to 10, right now, you're about a 3. On to the next slide in all these areas. Prayer life, you say, good morning, Lord, rather than good Lord, it's morning. Give yourself a 3. Bible, you got a Bible? Haven't opened it for a while, but you got one. Give you 3. People skills, yeah, they're around. Organization, you got a diary? Don't know where it is, but you got one. And your vision, hoping to make it through the week, okay? So let's just kind of give you a 3 in these areas. Don't elbow people next to you, really. On to the next slide. In life, there's a synergy. Things act on each other. So if we go 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 by 3, don't hit the slide yet. Where's all our math students? What does that equal? 243. Give Dave a big clap. It's all right, Dave. The clap's always really weak because they're all jealous. Okay? So although you're only a 3 out of a 10, which you go, look, I'm pretty average in all these areas, you add it all together, 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 is 243. Now, here's the question. Do you reckon you could move your prayer life from a 3 to a 4 in the next 6 weeks? Yep. Yeah, you could pray. You could read a book on prayer. You could come to a prayer meeting. You could talk to someone who prays a lot and go, so what do you do? Come on. In the next 6 weeks, you could move your prayer life from a 3 to a 4. You could do that. Your knowledge of the Bible, you could kind of open it. You could read a couple of verses, you know. Your people skills, your organization, you're following me, your vision. Go see someone in your field of interest or expertise that's doing more than you and go, oh, wow, look, I didn't realize that could be done. You could move from a 3 to a 4 in all these areas, and if you did so, the overall impact, don't hit next slide yet. Well, what does that equal? Dave, you got both of them. Bingo, raffle man. 1,024. Now, just consider this. You've only made a little increase. It looks like 25%, but it's officially a 33% increase from 3 to 4. You've made a little increase in a lot of areas, and the overall impact, 243 to 1,024, is a 400% growth. That's what Paul's telling Timothy. Hey, Timothy, work on this, work on this, work on this, work on this. And a year from now, people are going to say, you seen Timothy lately? Man, he's growing, he's progressing. And then, how many know when you're at a 4, next 6 months, you could maybe move to a 5. You following me? Excellence is the gradual result of always striving to do a little better. And there's so many ways to grow today. Reading, getting a mentor, coming to Monday night, leadership training nights. There's no excuse today not to be growing. There's so many opportunities. How are we doing, everybody? We are going okay? Yep. Good. Okay. So let's move on to our next principle, number 5, is to focus your ministry. This is the area of priorities. Every effective ministry I know has a sense of focus. I love the story. We'll get to Ephesians in a moment. There's a great story in Nehemiah. Nehemiah's up on the wall, and there's people wanting him to come down from the wall. Sanballat, Tobiah, hey, Nehemiah, come down. We want to talk to you. And he makes this great statement. I think it's Nehemiah 4:6 or 6:4 or somewhere in Nehemiah. He says, I am working on a great project. Why should I come down to you? That's unbelievable. And many of us don't have a great project, and we've discovered that everyone else has a wonderful plan for our life. And so we're continuing getting off the wall, and we end up very, very, very busy, but we don't have a sense of focus for our life. Paul says this, be very careful how you live, not as unwise or wise, but make the most of every opportunity. New King James says, redeem the time because the days are evil. Don't be foolish, but understand God's will. Paul says there's 2 kinds of people. There's fools and wise people. The wise person knows God's will, therefore they make the best of their time and they seize opportunities. The fool has no idea what God's will is. Therefore they miss opportunities and they waste their time. So here's my question to you. How many know the question is not, will the rest of the year be busy? That's not the question. The question is not, will 2019 be busy? The question is, what will it be busy with? Paul says if you're smart, you actually know what God's called you to do, and therefore you use your time by focusing on that. After 3 years of ministry, Jesus on the cross says, it is finished. Wouldn't that be nice to be finished? Not on the cross, but finished. How can you say it is finished, Jesus? You still haven't even been out of Israel. There's people still to be healed and churches to be planted. He was finished because he did what God called him to do, the Father called him to do. And so some of us actually need a not to-do list because we've got so much on our list. We're actually doing too many things rather than focusing on the few things that are important. Luke mentioned an illustration I shared a few years ago at a leaders event he and I were at together, and as a university lecturer talking about time management with his class. And he had a table and a big jar, and he brought a bucket of big rocks out and put all the big rocks inside the jar all the way to the top till it was pretty full. He said to the class, is the jar full? They said, yeah, looks pretty full to us. And then he brought out another bucket of small pebbles and sand and started pouring them around all the big rocks and all the way to the top. It was pretty full. He says, is the jar full? And they went, maybe not. And then he got another bucket of water and he poured all the water over the sand and little pebbles and the big rocks until it was full. He says, is the jar full? And they went, yeah, it's full. He goes, okay, what's the lesson? Remember, they're talking about time management. One lady lifts her hand and says, well, if you try really hard, you can get more in your week than you think you can. She goes, no. He goes, no, that's actually not the lesson. The lesson is, if I didn't put the big rocks in first, I would have never got them in. If you start with the water and the sand and you try to put the big rocks in, it's going to be a mess. And the big rocks are your priorities. Do you know what your priorities are? Do you know what's important? Next week will be busy, but do you have those priorities, those important things in your diary, in your schedule to be effective in ministry? It's vital that you do so. 2 more. Number 6, onto our next slide, is to share your ministry. It's the area of teamwork. Biblical leadership is team-based. In fact, the God we worship is not a solo God off by him or herself. God is one God existing in 3 persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, the first small group, if you will. And God, as Father, Son, and Spirit, were involved in the work of creation and the work of redemption. God is a team. And what you've been called to do is more than you can do alone. And so we need to learn to share our ministry and to be part of a team, but also to be team builders. Now, I'm going to move fairly quickly through this now. On to the next. Well, let's just read that there first. Mark 1. One day as Jesus was walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew throwing a net into the water. They fished for a living. Jesus called out and said, come, follow me. I will teach you. I will show you how to fish for people. This is Jesus, the apostle, the prophet, the evangelist, the pastor, the teacher. He had all the gifts, all the ministries, and yet the first thing he did was build a team. The first thing he did was get some other people and mobilize them into ministry. Let's go to the next slide and look how Jesus did this. 4 steps in those verses. Number 1 is to gather. I want to encourage you. Some of you are leaders already, and this is going to be great for you, but some of you may not have seen yourself as a leader, but maybe God's wanting you to take a step of becoming a team builder. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you've got to gather people. Jesus got out and said, hey, follow me. Follow me. Just learning to gather people, to be the kind of person people like to be around. It can start just with putting a smile on your face. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was a young leader, I had the job at the church I was working at of collecting guest speakers from the airport. And we had this one pastor from Africa, Elijah Maswanganji. And he came in and did a men's event for us, and he preached on the weekend. So Monday morning, I took the long drive from Wanturna South out to the airport. And so as I'm driving, I'm this young 20-something, kid, mid-20s, and Elijah started encouraging me. Hey, Mark, you're a good young leader. You've got great potential. God's hands on your life, and I'm enjoying the ride. And then he goes, there's a couple of things you need to work on. First of all, you need to smile more. You're very tall, and you're actually very intimidating. A smile warms and welcomes people. And then he shared a few other things that we don't have time to talk about tonight. Anyway, I dropped him at the airport fairly quickly. I started a long drive home, and I was annoyed. Smile. I'm smiling on the inside. I was ticked. But after a few days, I realized he was right. And so I started smiling. I drove down the road, get into the lift. Hey, everyone. Just started kind of smiling wherever I was. In fact, a few years later, I was preaching in Adelaide at a church. A lady came up and said, hey, you're the smiling preacher. I thought, Elijah, where are you now? I'm thankful for someone who had the courage to give me some feedback into my life. We don't have Jesus on video, not the real Jesus anyway. But it tells me something about Jesus when it says children ran towards him. What kind of a person do children run towards? Come on. Not someone baptized in lemon juice. Children ran towards Jesus. I know this is really deep for Monday night. This guy's coming in and telling us all to smile. If you want to be a team builder, you just got to be someone that people enjoy being around. Smile. Learn people's names. People love their names. I'm not naturally gifted at name remembering, but I work at it. And sometimes I get it wrong. But Jesus called people by name. Hey, Zacchaeus. Hey, let's do lunch today. Not, hey, little guy. Hey, shorty. Hey, hey, you in the tree. Hey, bro. Lazarus, come out. Good thing he said Lazarus, so everyone would have come out. No, just Lazarus. The rest of you later, you know. What we tend to do when we meet somebody, and I'm just trying to keep this microphone from flip it off. I met Raylene a little earlier. What we tend to do is we go, hi, what's your name? And while they're saying their name, we think of our next question. That's like saying, hey, Paul, throw me the ball, and you look away. No, if you're going to ask someone their name, hi, what's your name? You got to catch the ball. Hey, Raylene, nice to meet you. Use it. And then use it a second time. So, Raylene, what do? Don't overdo it. So, Raylene, what do? Raylene's a tax accountant. So, So, she can't give you money, but she can help you out. Just learning someone's name. This is not pop psychology. This is actually about gathering people, being someone that people enjoy being around. Jesus was that kind of person. The kind of person, if you're going out on Friday night, you'd invite along. Be one of those people. Gather, motivate. Jesus said, hey, you've been catching fish. I'm going to teach you how to catch people. See, we tend to see people the way they are and the way they used to be. Jesus sees the way we are now, and he sees what we can become. Be someone who sees what people can become. Then train. He didn't just motivate them, pump them up. He took 3 years of his life to teach them, to train them how to do ministry. And then he mobilized them. He sent them out. And then the process continued. Gather, motivate, train, mobilize. And so you may not be good at all of those, but I just want to encourage you. Be part of a team. Be a team builder. What God's called you to do is bigger than you can do by yourself. Matthew 9, 36, 37, Jesus once saw the multitudes and he says, guys, the harvest is great, but the workers are few. How many know not much has changed in 2,000 years? The harvest is great. City of Casey, City of Cardinia, fastest growing, a couple of municipalities in Australia. The harvest is great. What's needed? More workers. And can I suggest that for you, success is not just you being fruitful. Genesis 1:26. Some of you want a prophecy tonight. Here's a prophecy for you. Yea, verily, be fruitful and multiply. Success for you is not just you being good at what you do. That's fruitfulness. It's multiplying, reproducing yourself through other people. And so share your ministry. And then number 7, our final part of our buffet today is to fuel your ministry. And this has to do with the area of prayer. James 5:16, the earnest prayer of a righteous person has great power and produces wonderful results. We've all heard messages on prayer. We all know about prayer. I think for me, the issue with prayer is one of dependence. My oldest son, Josiah, who's now 29, when he was a little boy, a redhead like his dad, one day he was making a puzzle on the living room floor. And I came in and he wasn't doing a very good job. He was actually forcing some of the parts where they didn't fit, and he wasn't doing well. And I came in and I said, hey, Josiah, can I help you? And just like that, he went, I can do it. So what do you think I did? Catch you later. So I went to the next room, did whatever I was doing. After a while, when his frustration level got to a certain point, I felt a little tug on my jeans. Hey, Daddy, could you help me? What do you think I did? No, you had your chance. No, I went in and we did the puzzle together. And God spoke to me. You know, when I don't pray, it's like me going, hey, God, I can do it. Guess what he does? Catch you later. Ever been in a meeting where you wondered where God was? Maybe you were leading that meeting. You know, I love what Paul says. I can do all things. That's confidence. Through Christ who strengthens me. That's dependence. And so prayer to me, when I don't pray, I'm saying, God, I'm good with this. But when I pray, I'm saying, God, I'm ready. I've got some things, but without your presence, without your touch, without your power. Jesus actually told his disciples, without me, you can do nothing. And so we know this, but it's hard, isn't it? You know, when I used to go to Queensland for holidays, one of the things I hated to do was to stop for petrol. Because how many know when you stop for petrol, all of those caravans, semi-trailers, and slowpokes that you have been meticulously passing are now passing you. Come on, are you laughing at me or with me? I always wish there was a way to fill up with petrol without stopping. Like, wouldn't that be really cool? But how many know if you don't stop, you're actually not going to make the distance? And prayer's a little bit like that. If you're waiting for everything to be finished, you'll probably never pray. But as we stop, we refuel, we refresh, we recalibrate. Any ministry that's fruitful, that's impacting, is fueling it through an intimacy, a connection with Jesus. And so they are my few reflections for you tonight. Wherever God may have positioned you for this season, I believe God wants you to be fruitful, effective, and these are some ways that you can do so. Next slide is our summary. So value your ministry, love your ministry, live your ministry, grow your ministry, focus your ministry, share your ministry, fuel your ministry. Again, like I said yesterday, my goal is not to give you 7 more things to do, but very quickly, and I'm almost done, give yourself a score from 1 to 10 on each of these areas. A 10 being you should write a book on this. A 1 being you got a bit of work to do. No negative numbers, keep it between 1 and 10. So just give yourself a score. You don't have to hand it in, just in your mind. How's your perspective? Like, do you really see how important what you're doing is? Just give that a score. What about your attitude? How's it going, you know? Is someone else wet your bed, you know? What about your example? How's your life, you know? How are you growing, you know? Are you progressing from a year ago? How's your priorities? Are you trying to do everything? Or are you really clear on what those priorities are? How's your teamwork? Just give yourself a score, 1 to 10 on all of those. And then look at your lowest number. If you've got a couple of low numbers, just pick one of them and ask yourself, what could you do to lift that area over the next couple of weeks? And then as the prophet Nike says, just do it. Nike 1 verse 1. Just do it.